Department 25, we have Judge Kathleen Delaney and Sean Connell. And as a reminder, I'd like to ask the candidates to take a minute and 30 seconds to introduce themselves. The panelists will have 30 seconds to ask their questions, and the candidates will each have a minute to respond. So we'll start with Judge Delaney.
Thank you. My name is Kathleen Delaney. I am the current District Court Judge in Department 25. I am a Las Vegas native. I'm in my 24th year of practice, the last 14 of which have been in public service, first with the Attorney General's office and then with the bench. I was elected in 2008 by about a 24% margin, and I've been proud to serve the citizens of Clark County ever since. I've had a very varied docket in my tenure on the bench. At the request of court administration, I started out as civil and business court. I then became the judge who oversaw all the specialty courts, including drug court, DUI court, mental health court, competency court, and the veterans court component of that. I did that for about a year and a half. And since returning to a regular general docket, I have civil and criminal, as well as business court and the foreclosure mediation appeals. I believe I have the most varied docket of any of my colleagues, and again, it is a privilege. And I'm here today to ask those who are participating and listening to retain me for another 6-year term as District Court Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Sean. Please go ahead.
My name is Sean Connell. I grew up in Iowa. I went to college in Milwaukee and then went back to Iowa for law school before moving out to Las Vegas about 14 years ago. Been practicing in Las Vegas for the past 14 years. I've had some cases in northern Nevada, Reno area, but for the most part spent the last 14 years in Clark County. My practice consists mostly of civil defense, insurance-related matters, but I did spend a little bit of time doing criminal defense, bankruptcy, some labor law, plaintiff's cases, family law, so pretty wide variety of cases over the course of my last 14 years. I'm running because it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I feel that I would make a good judge for Clark County, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to ask an obvious question. Len Connell, is there any relation to Sean Connell?
Not that I know of, but with we Irish, you never know. Everyone always asks, is Jimmy Fitzpatrick your great-great-grandfather?
This is Nevada after all, so I figured I would ask.
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, please proceed. I'm sorry.
Okay, this is directed at both of the distinguished candidates. Do you believe that the creation of a state intermediate level appeals court, are we ready for it in Nevada, and is it justified cost to the taxpayers?
We'll start with Judge Delaney.
Thank you. I do believe it's justified, both as a cost to the taxpayers and it's necessary. Right now, the turnaround time from our Supreme Court, who I believe does the best they can with their caseload, is approximately 2 years on cases, and it's just not fast enough. Justice delayed is justice denied, as the saying goes. I think the way the current design is set forth, which would be considered a push-down court, which is appeals would go to the Supreme Court, they would then look and see what needs their attention immediately and what could otherwise be handled by the Court of Appeals, and then push down, so to speak, those matters, is a creative and an important way to handle it, and it will allow us to clear out the backlog and turn decisions around much more quickly.
Okay, thank you.
I also agree that the appellate court would be a good idea, and then I think that we're ready for it. I think the cost to the taxpayers would be justified because in addition to providing more precedent and making the court's job easier, it's also going to provide more consistent rulings and help out in the long run. So a number of matters that are litigated would be resolved quicker.
Okay, Myron.
Hi, good afternoon. This question, while it's directed to Mr. Connell, Judge, after he gives his answer, feel free to discuss whatever you'd like to discuss. My question to you, Mr. Connell, is that you're running for this Department 25 to be a judge in that department. What new implementations or things would you do differently than the implementations, policies, and procedures that are already being conducted in that department?
Well, I can honestly say that prior to this morning, Judge Delaney and I had never met each other, so I've never spent any time in her courtroom and can't speak directly to the policies that she has in place. I would say that one of the things that I would like to bring to the court is trying to make it much more efficient I'd like to try and implement a dual calendar, set something up where we have hearings in the morning, and then either later in the morning or even early in the afternoon, a second calendar that would alleviate the amount of time that people are sitting in the courtroom wasting time, whether it's attorneys or their clients who in turn are paying the attorneys. So that would be one of the first things I'd like to do, is look into having things that can be disposed of quickly on one calendar, things that are going to require more hearings and longer argument on a second calendar.
Thank you. I would only add that we can always be more efficient. We can always try to find ways to be more efficient. The trickiest part in juggling the schedule is how to handle calendars. And as I mentioned, I have 4 distinct and separate dockets. So I have to have calendars every morning of the week except for Friday, and how to also build in time for trials, because everybody tends to forget that part of it. But in order to build in the time for trials, it's virtually impossible to have afternoon calendars on a regular basis. However, we do create efficiencies by building in evidentiary hearings and other matters in those time frames. But we run as efficiently as we can. We keep our caseload moving. We also audit our cases regularly to make sure that the attorneys are keeping the cases moving, and we're always looking for efficiencies there.
Okay, thank you. Forrest Darby.
Yes, I'd like to know what political party each one of you belong to.
I'm a registered Democrat.
I'm registered nonpartisan. I was originally registered as a Republican, but have since switched my affiliation a number of years ago, and felt that I would prefer to be kind of in the middle.
Okay, thank you. Jason, you're up.
Thank you. And thank you for both of you for spending some time today with us here on the panel. You both are professionals. Mr. Connell, with your law practice, Judge Delaney, with all the time you spent with juggling the 4 different calendars like you spoke about. Other than what you do for the community as a judge or as an attorney, what do you do within the community to help the community get better? Judge, if you handle that one first, and then...
No, I'm happy to. I'll go first unless someone tells me otherwise. I have been a long time advocate of many causes in this community. When I first moved back to Las Vegas, I was on the board of directors for Share Our Strength, which is a hunger relief organization. I did that for approximately 5 years. I then did the Leadership Las Vegas program through the Chamber of Commerce. I then was on their community council in an effort to better improve business relations and public relations with the business community. I have also, since 2002, I have been the board member and since 2007 president of Las Vegas Basset Rescue, which is a dog rescue organization that operates here in Las Vegas. I work in conjunction with the shelter and the other rescue groups to try to minimize the impact of homelessness and euthanasia on our animals in our community, and have advocated for the passage of laws that would assist in avoiding animal cruelty and animal overpopulation. And I've also advocated for anti-discrimination legislation for many groups in the community throughout my tenure prior to and while being on the bench.
Unfortunately, I'm not a member of any formal organization that's part of the community, so I don't have something like that that I can refer to. The majority of what I've done is just through friends and their children, try and help out whenever I can. For instance, volunteered to coach volleyball, take friends out to the park with their kids that are in clubs, things like that, and just kind of help them out. So nothing formal or official, but I do definitely care about the community and try to do what I can.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Love the answers. You're short and to the point, very informative though. Angie, you're up.
So what's the biggest mistake you guys have made in your professional careers in the last 10 years? And a mistake where you didn't get extra information afterwards that would have served that decision, just where you simply made the wrong decision?
That's a very good question. I have been reversed twice on jurisdictional issues where I had, I believed, done a very thorough canvass of research to try to determine a matter that was a first impression for me in terms of jurisdiction issues, and found out from the Supreme Court that my research was not detailed enough, And the Supreme Court then reversed those matters and indicated that I was in error in dismissing those cases. I have since improved my research skills and that of my law clerk to make sure that we don't miss things. But I think it's a lot of times when you have a matter that's the first time before you, you do the best you can. You hopefully apply your common sense as well as the rule of law as you find it to be, and then ultimately our Supreme Court will decide on what to do. But I would say those are the things. I've made some very controversial decisions, but I stand by them and don't believe that they were in error, and those have been upheld. But controversial cases, I should say, are plentiful.
And I apologize, just wondering if I get some clarification. Are you referring to with regard to a specific case or something with regard to our career?
Just anything that you've done in the last 10 years that you look back on now that you're haunted by that decision that you made.
Well, because I guess the first thing that comes to mind is that the job I took about 10 years ago for someone that I went to work for, and I really regretted spending the time working at that office, but I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for. Or if you're
A specific thing where your job was impeding, you made the wrong decision, impeding on somebody's personal life or whatever the case may be.
Right, and I guess with regard to a more specific case-based regret that I have, that I had a client that was pursuing non-payment of a contract, and we discussed the options as to different venues where we could pursue the case, and eventually made the decision to file it here in the U.S. in federal court. Ended up having a judge decide that there was no jurisdiction and dismissing it, and then the client was forced to then take the case to Macau to pursue the entity that he was trying to recover payment from. So I kind of felt like we wasted a little bit of his time and money by not originally doing it in that venue.
Okay, thank you. Stuart, you're up.
Thank you both for being here today. I'm not as interested in what political party people are on. I'd like to know if either of you consider yourselves strict constitutionalists, why or why not, and which Supreme Court justice you would think your legal methodology meshes with most greatly.
As a strict constructionist, I would say to you that I would not consider myself to be a strict constructionist in this sense. I think that is a term that is, the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think that there are certain folks who will say that they are strict constructionists when it suits their purposes, and then ultimately rule differently when it doesn't. I think if you mean by strict constructionist that you believe in the Constitution, that you believe that it says what it means and means what it says, and then you follow the rule of law as any precedent-setting court has interpreted it before you, and follow stare decisis, then you are a strict constructionist in that sense. I would say that I would suggest to you that I am concerned about, depending on the definition of it, so I guess in the way I interpret it, meaning, do I believe in the Constitution? Yes. Do I apply the Constitution with the rule of law? Yes. But do I also believe that there are cases that will come before you that require interpretation that some may not believe is strict construction, and that you have to be open to applying the Constitution to the facts of the case? I also believe that is true. So I think in that sense I would have to say that I would not potentially meet the definition of strict constructionist.
And with regard to which Supreme Court justice I would compare myself to, or is most aligned with, it's not something I've ever thought about, and I don't know that it would be a good idea for me to just throw something out off the top of my head, because I don't really have an answer to that question. With regard to interpreting the Constitution, I do think that it is the supreme law of the land, and that when there's an issue that affects the Constitution, you have to look at the document, read the document, and apply it to the facts of the case. I don't think that there's a justification, I guess, for trying to find ways around it. I don't know if that necessarily fits me into the definition of a strict constructionalist or not, but I do definitely think that the document speaks for itself and needs to be applied in the manner that it was written. So.
And I'm sorry, I forgot about the part about I would say Justice Stevens.
Yeah, I was going to redirect.
Thank you, I apologize for interrupting. I would say Justice Stevens, over the course of his tenure on the Supreme Court, there's been a number of Supreme Court justices that I thought did an amazing job. Justice Kennedy has been in that position that he's been in for quite some time, and I think the balance that he has struck has been admirable and very well done. But I would say Justice Stevens overall in terms of decisions.
Mr. Connell, I'll cross here. I'm trying to play Lawrence, not working. But go ahead, if you want to.
I don't think that I had anything to add, but thank you.
That's fine.
A great question. Okay, and I'll remind the panelists to always use the microphone because we have people in the back that can't hear. We're also recording this, and I think we've been doing a good job with that, but just a friendly reminder. Go ahead, Lily.
So this question is only for Mr. Connell, and it's generic, but why do you want to be a judge?
Well, the simple answer is just that it's something I've always wanted to do. But to give you a little more substance, I guess, over the course of my career, I've always felt that my temperament, my personality, my approach to reasoning are all things that would be suited to being a judge. And I know it's something I'd be good at. So I'd like to be able to apply my talents in a way that I think would benefit the people of Clark County.
Okay, that was only for Mr. Connell? Okay, well. Patrick, very good.
Thank you. I have a very simple, direct question. Do you feel that in order for one to vote, they should show a state-issued identification card?
I do not.
Driver's license, passport? You do not?
I do not. There's a lot more information to that question, but you asked for a simple question for a simple answer. I think that's a
Thank you.
simple
Thank
answer.
you.
I think that that's a decision that the government needs to make, whether it's through the legislature or a higher court. So I don't know that it's my place to say. But my personal opinion, I think that voting is a right for all citizens. And if you are a U.S. citizen, you're entitled to vote. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And does that satisfy your question? Okay. Moving on. Lots of questions. We have a few extra minutes here, so I'm kind of trying to draw you out and trying to make sure that you all get equal time. Robert.
Yeah. Just wanted to see both of yours opinion regarding constitutional application of the NSA blanket search warrants for mass data, and if you believe, and there's basically been two cases recently that have been decided, both different, and it's going to go up to the Supreme Court hopefully eventually. What is your opinion on that, as far as whether the government has that authority or whether it violated the Constitution, and whether, and I don't want to know whether you would rule on it specifically, but just your general feeling about the right to privacy and whether it's a violation?
My information is based on the press coverage that I have seen. I'm not familiar with the federal court cases that you are referring to that I know of. You didn't name names, and I know what I've seen in the press coverage. What I have seen in the press coverage appalls me, concerns me greatly. I think that anytime our federal government puts aside privacy rights and the rights of its individual citizens in some effort it believes is necessary to whatever it is, combat terrorism or otherwise, and goes too far, which it appears to me from what I have read, these actions have gone way too far, then as a citizen, I'm gravely concerned.
And again, I also am limited to what I've read and seen on the news, so do not have all of the facts. I can't speak to it specifically, but with that caveat, I think that there are certain times and certain reasons the government needs to take extreme measures. However, I think that they're still bound by the Constitution, and if they're going to be imposing wiretaps, surveillance on American citizens, they still need to comply with the requirements of the Constitution. And if they haven't done so, then their programs violate the Constitution and should not be allowed.
Okay. We actually, this is unprecedented. We're actually running ahead of schedule.
And we're
That's
Irish,
right.
we're supposed to talk too much.
Leave the accountant in charge, and this is what happens. But, okay, Stuart,
Yeah, I actually,
can we, please use the microphone. We're going to have the exception to the one question per panelist, judging on the time here, but please keep it.
I'm curious, with respect to the question that was just asked, just to go off on a little bit, do you believe that the way that the FISA court ostensibly operates is in and of itself constitutionally provided for, and if it's reasonable, if you do think it's constitutionally provided, whether the breadth of expression that that court currently makes is reasonable at this point?
I apologize, I didn't hear what court you said.
The FISA court?
The FISA court. I'm not good with acronyms. I'm sorry, am I missing what you're
The
asking?
FISA court is the court that oversees warrants for investigation
At the federal level.
at the federal level for
Okay.
classified.
I've not heard it referred to that way, so I apologize. And that, I'm not saying that that's a wrong reference, I just not familiar with that. So that's going to be a difficult question for me to answer since I'm not familiar with that. If that is the court that has been determining that these warrants that have been issued or these abilities to proceed without warrants, these warrantless searches, from what I have seen again that has been covered in the press, then I would suggest that that court is potentially operating outside the bounds of what the Constitution allows. But I have not seen enough to know, and I apologize for that. I'd like to be able to answer your question.
Trying to see how you think.
Yeah.
And I apologize, can you repeat the question?
I was just asking about how you see and how you feel about the constitutionality of the FISA court. The FISA court oversees basically classified warrants
Right.
for investigation
So,
by our intelligence community.
right, I just want to make sure I fully understood what it was that you were asking. With regard to the constitutionality of it, I think that definitely needs a court that is going to review the actions of the executive branch and determine whether or not they're complying with the Constitution. If it's determined that they're not, then obviously it's unconstitutional and should be struck down. With regard to if you're asking specific actions taken by that court without seeing the facts and what we're specifically referring to, I can't really say.
All right. Kind of curious your outlook.
Okay. Well, keeping with the process here, we've certainly had a good spirited forum. And again, it's supposed to be an educational forum, not a debate. And all the candidates thus far have done a really good job at keeping focused on educating veterans in politics and the audience. And at this point, I do want to acknowledge the camera work being done by Andre Haynes. Doors being handled by Brian Bouchant, if I'm hoping pronouncing that right. And sound is Scott Gormley, the owner of Rhythm Kitchen. We seem to have solved our phone issue downstairs. They got their takeout order. But at this point, we will take a break and we'll stand in recess until 2:14 p.m.